Buenas tardes, bienvenidos al Planetario. Good afternoon, welcome to the Planetarium. Before presenting our speaker of today, we are going to introduce as well Marcus Watkins, who is the NASA representative here in Spain. He's going to give you some words about the collaboration with NASA and all the other agencies, and also his work and their work here in Spain with Lola Cadierno, who is his assistant, his assistant. Okay, Marcus, please tell us some words. Okay.
Muchas gracias, Telmo. Muchas gracias a todos. Buenas tardes. I'm going to switch to English. You're going to hear from Kevin in English, but this is such an exciting time for space in Spain, and I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored that we have a variety of guests that are in town from not only our speaker today, Kevin Coggins, but Philip Baldwin, our chief lawyer as well, Steve Mermina, and Gregory Mann, who handles international relations for us as well. So it's exciting because Spain also has a space agency, and you have a brand new leader in Juan Carlos Bello, and we just met with him today, and it's an exciting time to see space agencies being created around the world, and especially here in Spain. Space seems to be everywhere, and there seems to be a lot of interest from young people as well as old with respect to Spain. And so it's an exciting time, and it also is a great time because NASA's been working in a collaborative fashion with Spain for over 60 years. And actually this year, we're going to celebrate our 60th anniversary later in the fall of the relationship with respect to our space communications. We have 6 functional antennas out at Robledo, and we've been here again for 6 decades. And on Monday, this coming Monday, we're going to be signing an agreement with Spain for another 60 years of collaboration. So that's exciting. NASA and Europe and the rest of the world are going to the moon, and Spain and the station at Robledo will play a critical role in bringing communications down from the moon, just like it did with the initial moon landing. And so it's just an exciting time for space and an exciting time for Spain. And so you're going to hear a lot from our distinguished guest, Kevin Coggins, a little bit later today. And I urge you to look for the stars and enjoy and continue moving forward with space collaboration as we all begin to discover more and more about not only this planet, but also the universe. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus. Well, our guest is Kevin Coggins. As you already have read, perhaps in our invitation, he's Deputy Associate Administrator and Program Manager of NASA Space Communication Navigation Program called SCAN. And Kevin is a deputy, and he's responsible for the development, acquisition, and management of reliable and cost-effective communication navigation services to meet NASA and other government agency requirements for human and robotic space exploration programs in Earth, lunar, Mars, and deep space. He is from Florida, of course. He likes this weather here in Spain, so he's very happy. So I'm not going to tell any more because Kevin is willing to say and to give the presentation. Thank you very much, Kevin, and welcome to, and thank you very much for your presentation and to go here. Thanks a lot.
Buenas tardes. Es un placer estar aquí hoy con ustedes. Este año cumplimos 60 años de colaboración que espero continúen los próximos 60. We've accomplished so much together. Since the establishment of the Madrid Deep Space Network 60 years ago. This is the anniversary year. Together, we've enabled missions to study the sun, explore the planets, understand the Earth, and even venture into interstellar space beyond the planets with Voyager. Our shared journey into the cosmos has just started. Together, we're going to continue to unlock the secrets of the universe. We're going to return to the moon, and we're going to venture to Mars. To Spain, I express our gratitude and excitement. Our partnership is just beginning. Today, I'm going to tell you about the critical enabler to our adventure in space, and that's communications. Imagine for a minute that your cell phone didn't work, that your GPS in your car could not connect and help you navigate. You'd feel disconnected, alone. You couldn't call your significant other. You couldn't call your children. You couldn't call your friends. You'd be isolated. That's not how we do space. We make sure that everything we send is connected. One day, we're going to stand as a race in a new place we've never been before. We're going to send robotic missions to fly through an atmosphere or take samples on the ground of a planetary body or some structure in space that has never been touched by humanity before. Imagine that. But when that data is collected, or when the person stands there glimpsing at maybe 3 suns, we want that data to come back here so that we can share in that adventure. We want to make sure that we can have the science here for us to study and understand the new discoveries. So how do we do that? NASA has communication networks all over the world. Think of these as mouths and ears. We send information to spacecraft from launch to orbits and to planetary surfaces like Mars. And then we have to listen for them to communicate back. The Deep Space Network allows us to do that far beyond the moon, far beyond the planets, and even outside of the solar system. And there are 3 Deep Space Network sites: Australia, the United States, and in Madrid. We're going to talk about the Deep Space Network for a minute. When you use your cell phone, you can call anywhere in the world. What we want from the Deep Space Network is the ability to call anywhere in space. But because the Earth rotates, we have to make sure we put antennas all the way around the Earth. And you see the 120 degrees. They are almost exactly 120 degrees apart, so that as the Earth rotates, we can see everywhere in space with these antennas. Everyone see the soccer field on the right-hand side? That is the size of the 70-meter deep space antenna in a soccer field. It covers the grass. It's incredible. What we have in Robledo here in Madrid are 5 34-meter antennas and 1 70-meter antenna. That's a lot of communication capability. That's more than any other deep space network site in the world. And there's a nice picture of it. It's a beautiful complex. How many people have been out there to see it? Outstanding. There is data constantly coming from space missions into this network. Data that's accessible by scientists, and when we return to the moon with Artemis, data that's going to allow us to receive video and talk to the astronauts here in Madrid. We're going to enable the extraordinary in deep space. The Voyager spacecraft are both outside of the influence of the sun. And the Deep Space Network at Madrid, we're going to tell a story about in a minute, is essential to talking to those spacecraft. As we send planetary probes to Uranus, Saturn, that data comes in through Madrid, through the Deep Space Network. How many of you guys have seen photos of any of the planets in the solar system? You've seen data that has come through this network, this incredible capability. Do you know how old the network is? 60 years. I gave it out earlier. Some of these antennas are older than most of us in this room. There's dedicated staff at these sites that make sure they stay operating. And it's a hard job because we need these antennas every single day. Every once in a while, we'll take one offline and repair it, but we need it back as fast as we can get it. Why do we need it back so fast? Because there's science data that's there for us to pull down and learn from. And we don't want to miss anything. How many have seen images from the Hubble Space Telescope? Amazing. And the Webb. But now we're sending up a mission called Roman. And Roman is actually going to take the largest, most detailed pictures of the sky continuously that we've ever had. We'll see changes that we can't see today, and it's going to help us understand the nature of our universe. That data is going to flow through our networks. But what I want to talk about is Voyager. How many people in here are over 60 years old? Right? All right. So you watched the beginning of Voyager. Many of us, we were children when Voyager happened, or for some, it was after you were born. These spacecraft are very old. Space is a very hazardous environment. There are particles hitting these spacecraft constantly causing damage. And they can only survive for so long. Voyager was not meant to survive this long, Voyager 1 or Voyager 2. And miraculously, through a lot of hard work, we're still collecting data from them. Voyager 1 went offline last year. We weren't sure why. We weren't receiving data from it. The data was kind of garbled. It was hitting the big antennas, but we weren't really able to make sense of it. And so we didn't know what was wrong. We just know it was broken. And the engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, formed a Voyager Anomaly Resolution Tiger team. Their job was to figure out, how do we fix Voyager and get it back? They had to repair this satellite from 24.4 billion kilometers away. To communicate to it, the data took 22 hours and 34 minutes to get there. Something had to happen on the satellite, or the spacecraft, and then 22 hours and 34 minutes to get back. 45 hours round trip. So I had the pleasure in April of visiting this Tiger team while they were performing this work. There were retirees who came out of retirement who helped design Voyager to help troubleshoot it. There were young college students who knew the latest in software programming, trying to decipher the signal. There were all kinds of engineers in the room who had a specialty they used as a team to try to figure out how to fix Voyager. In fact, some of the software they used to fix Voyager, they copied out of a printed memo. It wasn't even on a computer. And it was in what's called hexadecimal code, machine code, right? Ones and zeros. And you didn't know what it meant just looking at it, except for some of these retired engineers who looked at it and said, oh yeah, that bit makes this switch turn, and this bit over here, does this to the Voyager. And so they used that software to help diagnose what was going on with Voyager through the antennas in Madrid. They'd send a test, wait 45 hours for the result. They'd get the result on a Friday, and so they would work all weekend studying the result, 7 days a week since the fall of last year. They made a discovery. There was bad memory. I'm just going to jump ahead to something. They had to figure out, how do we change our software to push it back up into Voyager and only put the data we need where the good memory is and not where the bad memory is. Remember, from a great distance, they had to do this with the spacecraft. If they made a mistake, they could possibly never talk to it again. But they had to understand what was coming back. So one of these young engineers wrote what's called Python code and figured out how to decipher what was coming back. We couldn't decipher it with our equipment in the Deep Space Network, but he could record it, run it through software, and decipher it. So he figured out, hey, the satellite's still working, just something's broken. And that helped them figure out where the bad memory was. And so they went and did some diagnosis, and they did a test. And about 2 weeks ago, they fixed it and started pulling science data back. But you need to understand something very special about NASA's relationship with Spain and what happened in Madrid that was not possible anywhere else. Madrid is the only Deep Space Network site with 6 antennas. And for the very first time, we aimed all 6 antennas at Voyager in an array. And you can see on this DSN Now application that you can look at on your phone to see where every antenna is pointing and what it's talking to, all 6 were talking to Voyager 1 at the same time. So that's a picture of the Madrid site talking to Voyager 1 after it was recovered. That's historic, and it's only possible because of our partnership. So next we're going to the moon with Artemis. We're going to have a sustained presence on the moon. I was asked earlier today about what message I would have for children in Spain about a future as an astronaut that went to the moon or Mars. And I leaned back and I thought about that for a minute. And my answer was this: that's a dream you can achieve. We're going to the moon, and we're going to Mars, and we're going to the moon to stay. And then we're going to push on to set human feet on Mars and a sustained human presence in the solar system away from the Earth. It's incredible. It's the children today that are going to achieve that on Mars. We're preparing to achieve that this decade on the moon. The Deep Space Network is one of the prime capabilities we're going to use to talk to the astronauts, the spacecraft, and the robotic explorers, and the rovers, and the habitats we send to the moon through Madrid. We've made history together on Voyager. Now we're about to make history together on the moon and then Mars. This is an amazing partnership. Artemis 2 will return humans to the moon. We're targeting September 2025. A crew of 4 on a 10-day mission. The first woman and the first person of color to the moon. And we're going to do it together. As children, we all had dreams. Some of us dreamed to be astronauts, some of us dreamed to be engineers, but we all had an aspiration of what we wanted to be. And there's usually someone that encouraged us. The children today have dreams. They're going to build upon the technologies that we built and the dreams we've achieved. But let's think about what we've achieved that we can tell them. We're exploring the solar system together, not independently. We've sent men to the moon. We're sending men and women back to the moon. There will be space stations, commercial space stations orbiting the Earth. And we're going to venture onto Mars. And we've sent spacecraft beyond the solar system together. If we've done that, think about how they're going to use this technology that was built before many of us were born to do even more. And so my answer to the children that would be an astronaut is go do it. Do the things we can only imagine. That was our experience. And the Deep Space Network is the key enabler for that. Take them out to see the antennas. Take them out to understand what this technology has enabled, and then let them dream. Because I can tell you, their dreams will exceed everything we've seen and done to date, everything we could dream. They've got unbridled imaginations. The key to our success is their imagination and our partnership. Science, to expand our understanding of the universe and our world, and exploration, so that we as a human race can step out in this adventure and explore the world around us. Let's take a look about what Artemis is going to look like as we go to the lunar South Pole region. You see many Artemis missions, but you also see something called Gateway. Gateway is a space station that's going to be at the moon as a gateway to exploration, as a gateway to where we go next, as a gateway to the moon. And we're going to expand upon it. It's going to help us to persist on the moon. We're going to send more robotic missions to the moon. We're going to send uncrewed landers to the moon, rovers to the moon, and ultimately humans down to the moon. The children of today are going to achieve this on Mars. They're going to do things and make discoveries that are going to change the world forever. Let's look at a quick overview of the Artemis II mission. You know, that's exciting. That's coming. All right. That video is a vision of what's going to happen in the future. But what's happened recently? Boeing Starliner just had a very successful launch just the other day. Today, SpaceX had a successful launch of Starship, both essential for the Artemis mission. Spain has, the two newest Spanish astronauts, Sara Garcia and Pablo Alvarez. Pablo awaiting for a mission, awaiting a mission. The message I would have to the children on whether or not they should dream and how they should dream about being an astronaut, don't just look at what we're about to do. Look at what's going on in the world today with these launches of technology to get us to the moon. and these Spanish astronauts that are going to go places we've never been before. All of it's going to be enabled through our communications networks that we manage together, the Deep Space Network. Thank you for your time today, and I'd love to hear your questions. Do we have a microphone for questions?
Yes. Thank you very much, Kevin. And if you have a question, just put your hand on. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Isaac. Do you know who is going to be going to Mars? Like who the people are?
Thanks for that question, Isaac. We don't know yet, but they will be obviously astronauts, right? And so I believe the astronauts that are candidates for that haven't even applied to be astronauts yet. So future astronauts, people that start preparing today, academically, physically, and apply to become astronaut candidates will be those astronauts. Do you want to, Isaac? Do you want to be one of those astronauts?
And me. I want to go, if it's possible. I will give everything, you know. Okay, so I'm thinking about we're going to go to the moon. We're trying to achieve also Mars. What about Europe? I think we should get a lot of money, you know, whatever, to go to Europe. I think it is one of the places in the solar system that we can find the first life outside of the Earth. What do you think about it? I know the technology is very important, and we don't have the technology, but are we working to go forward to trying to achieve Europe?
You know, I do know that we are pursuing science all over the universe, including Europa, so that we can understand and search for the building blocks of life. And so, are we looking to understand Europa and make scientific discovery? Absolutely. Do I believe that one day that we may send humans toward Europa? Absolutely, I do. I think we're going to send humans to every corner of the solar system where there's discovery to be made.
So I have a question. Lately, there is a lot of talk about the Starlink constellation and the problems that it is posing for the astronomers. Is this also creating some problems for your deep space network? So many satellites in the low Earth orbit?
Not at all. So these satellites or these satellite dishes, right, use radio frequencies that aren't affected at all by other satellites that are in space. And so no impact at all.
Hello, I was just waiting, sorry. Thank you for your talk, even though we arrived quite late. I am Maria Luque. Thank you very much for your description of the Artemis project and everything that you do with the Deep Space Network. My question is a very specific one. So within the work that you plan to lay down in the next 5 to 20 to 30 years, regarding interplanetary connectivity techniques, I know that you are considering delay-tolerant networking. as a connectivity measure, do you also plan to integrate quantum communications in the deep space network in the next 20 to 30 years?
A wonderful question. We have a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
So delay-tolerant networking is very important to NASA. You saw the example of Voyager, where it took 45 hours round trip for data to get back to us. Well, if we were trying to send video or other types of data, some of it could get lost, right? If it has to go an indirect link down. What delay-tolerant networking allows us to do is for some of that data to get delayed, and eventually it all comes back together. It's a very robust form of communication. So yes, on delay-tolerant networking is very important to our future as we want to communicate out robustly across great distances and where we may not have a direct line for an optical link and things like that. The next paradigm in space communications that's already started is optical, and be it an optical crosslink between a satellite, deep space optical from our deep space network into space, or just any form that uses light to transmit data. One of the things that we are looking at is what we call quantum-enabled optical. As you do research in quantum communications or quantum information transfer, you have to develop things called interferometers and other types of measurement tools. Well, we take those tools that are developed in quantum research and we can apply them to optical to make optical better, right? To get more data in a photon or in a stream of photons, for example. Now, but when you talk about pure quantum communications, that's, you know, the maturity of that technology is right now very low, right? And there's no real practical application. However, it promises to completely transform communications. In quantum, there's a thing called entanglement. It means if you take like two photons and you entangle them, and let's say I move one of them to where Voyager 1 is and keep one of them in Madrid, instantly when one changes, the other changes. And so instead of 45 hours, it's instant communication. That's the theory, right? That many scientists are working to prove and to make practical so we can do those amazing things. When that is proven and made practical, you bet we will use that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation. I was going to ask what you have just answered about quantum communications, but since you have already answered, I would like you to detail a little bit more what is the current status of the optical communications in NASA for the Deep Space Network. Perhaps also talking about the frequency range utilized at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, you know, we have optical in many networks in NASA. But with the Deep Space Network, we have a project called DSOC, right? Deep Space Optical Communications. And one of the, you know, if you think about optical, it's like a laser, it is a laser beam, right? It's a beam of light. Well, when you have a big antenna, right, you have a pattern that it spreads, like your ear. Your ear can hear out at a pattern. But a laser is like looking through a straw to communicate. And so you have to aim it precisely at what you're trying to talk to. Well, what do we have on the Earth that is the best at aiming at distant targets? Our Deep Space Network antennas. And so we've retrofitted one of those with optical receivers in the antenna so we can point it very precisely at deep space missions. And so I would say we're in the phase of pretty mature experimentation where we've proven incredible data rates at extremely long distances, and that for deep space optical, it's going to be a technology that enables, you know, many future missions as it expands.
Hi. Here. No. Thanks for the presentation. The question is, after we go to the moon, how big is the step we need to go to Mars or Europe, maybe?
That's a great question. It's a big step. The moon's right there. It's right there, but it's a challenge to build infrastructure so that we can have a sustained presence there, like we wish. We're learning so much through Artemis on how to be successful at that. One of the strategies we have in Artemis is for the technologies and infrastructure we use on the moon, it should be a pathfinder for how we do the same mission on Mars. And so that learning should transfer when we push out at a greater distance. But that greater distance is the #1 challenge with going to Mars. Moving mass is what the space industry is all about. Moving mass off of the Earth into space, moving mass to the moon, moving mass into orbits. It takes a lot of energy to move mass out of our gravity well called Earth. We've got to move that mass to Mars, which is a much bigger challenge than doing that, moving it to the Earth. And you have to be able to stop when you get to Mars, get down to the surface, right, of a planet that has very different characteristics than the moon. And so there's going to be continued learning to do, but what we do in Artemis is going to close so many gaps and mature our technology greatly. So thank you for that question.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here. Talking about this imminent program to go to the moon, Artemis, right? The rockets and the spacecraft you are going to use, are you collaborating with SpaceX? Are they going to be a SpaceX or NASA or both or a hybrid?
So good question. So there's more than one provider of launch services and capabilities supporting Artemis, and of course, SpaceX is one of those, and one reason they're working so hard on Starship is to make that capability available for the Artemis mission. Yes, sir.
Hi. Quick question about nuclear propulsion. What do you think about that, and why there are no that much applications on nuclear propulsion?
Well, I am not an expert on nuclear propulsion, so I may have to take a pass on that one. So thank you for that question. I'll see if I can follow up and have one of my colleagues answer that. Thank you.
Oh, I have a more down-to-earth question here.
Thank you.
There used to be a tiny, very nice museum at the antenna site, which has been closed for the last, 5-6 years, and it's supposed to be refurbishing, but do you have any idea when that's going to open again? Because I'd love to take my kids there again.
I am so glad to hear you say that. I have been in several conversations this week on that topic. For that museum to open, so that we can do more with it to reach the community. We can get children moving back through there. I don't have a timeline, but it will reopen. Thank you.
Thank you for this conference. Very interesting. First of all, for the station in Robledo de Chavela. The first knowledge I have ever of the antennas was that they were in the mountains. For instance, the Monte Palomar in California and so on. But here in Chavela, they are in the valley instead of being in the mountain. Is there any difference that they will be in the mountain or in a valley?
Well, when you think about the distances spacecraft are from the Earth, right? The link to the spacecraft, it's not going to matter so much about elevation. But what matters is that you're in an area that is relatively electrically quiet and you don't have other interferers, other things transmitting energy that you might receive in those really big antennas that are very sensitive, or that you might interfere with because of all the energy you're pushing into space. So it's more about finding an area that's large enough, far enough away from population centers, so there's no interference and it's electrically quiet. Thank you for that question.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. I wanted to ask you about the evolution of the DSN network, and particularly, I don't know if currently there are applied any technologies that link several antennas to make a larger virtual dish or anything like that, or if there's going to be something like that in the future.
That's a great question. So one thing is the network in Madrid started with one 46-meter antenna during the days of Apollo. But I'm going to pull up this picture here. Today, that 46-meter antenna is decommissioned. However, we have 5 34-meter antennas and one massive 70-meter antenna. And we array them today, right? And that allows them, arraying these antennas is like, cupping your ear, or even putting more ears around your ear actually and cupping them. And it makes it extremely sensitive, and you can pull the data into all of them, and then you process that to pull the signal out with a contribution from each antenna. We do that today. Thanks for asking. What's amazing is this infrastructure is 60 years old, and we have state-of-the-art techniques we're using it, like arraying and the signal processing we do to sense extremely weak signals. It's just a testament to the engineers that work in the Deep Space Network.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the talk. And are there any plans to expand the Deep Space Network, either on the actual locations or future new locations?
Yeah, we actually have active projects where we're building new antennas. A project called LEGS, Lunar Exploration Ground Systems, and other enhancements and improvements at the DSN sites so that we have sufficient capability to support not just Artemis, but all the science missions that happen at the same time as Artemis.
Yes,
one more.
About what you said about the sustained astronaut activity in the moon, I guess this mission program for 2025 is not yet meant to be with a sustained presence of astronauts in the moon, right? Or it is?
No, not yet. It's a building block. Here I've got a chart I'm going to show you. Right here. You can see there's a series of Artemis missions that are going to take place. As we do that, eventually we'll have Gateway up there orbiting the moon that we'll expand upon. And every time there's a mission, there will be some purpose of that to buy down the risk, help us, prove our ability to do a new piece of that ultimate mission of a sustained presence. We also have to move a lot of logistics up there for that presence, right? There's no place locally on the moon to go buy the things we need, right? We have to take it all with us. And so it's a measured, well thought out, incremental plan, and with a lot of essential building blocks that's ultimately going to get us to that goal. For the future Artemis missions, there are not set dates for all of them yet. This is going to happen over a pretty good time horizon. But if because we're learning as we go, right? We're doing things that have never been done before. The further you go out, the little more uncertainty is as to the date because of how you might structure that mission based on what you've learned. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I would like to ask, thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Why is it 5 of 34 antennas and 1 of 70 instead of so many of 34, like taking out 2 of the 34 ones and 1 other of 70?
That's a great question. I can tell you, once I build an antenna, there are science missions that need to use it, right? And but once we build an antenna, I want to keep it. I don't want to bring it down. And so as we have science missions and exploration missions launch over time, it changes what we require, right? And right now we're in a planning window for some amazing science missions and the Artemis missions. And so we look at, what do I have? Because remember, these things last 30, 40, 50 years. What do I have? What do I need to add to what I have in order to meet the mission requirements? And so it's not a clean sheet design. It's leveraging what was built before and taking maximum advantage of that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for the conference, for your time, for being here, make it possible. We have talked about the good things. We're happy. Let's talk about the hard things. No? What about the money? What about the money? I mean, it's a risk in this project, you know, because it's a long project. It's American money. It's mixed. We are in risky times. We're in war with all around the world, and maybe it's a risk, no, about the money, the budget. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. What we do in the Deep Space Network and with international partners, we all have a contribution to. In some cases, it could be US dollars. In some cases, it's Spanish dollars. The Deep Space Network in Madrid is a good example of that. As we pursue Artemis, we have partners like the European Space Agency and JAXA that are providing essential capabilities with their budgets to help. And so collectively as a team, the budget's wonderful. We're getting a lot of support through our partnerships to accomplish the missions that we're planning. So thank you for that question. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a question. Have you started using, it's here. Have you started using artificial intelligence to process the data, and how can the artificial intelligence impact the way you manage these space communications in the coming years?
That's a great question. How many of you guys are familiar with like machine learning and artificial intelligence? Right. So machine learning and processing algorithms that learn have been used to help us process communications for a long time. Those kind of technologies aren't new. The label of artificial intelligence around them is what's relatively new. Even when we array antennas, we use different algorithms. The engineer I talked about in the Voyager 1 story who wrote the Python algorithm, right? And that had some machine learning in it. What I call machine learning, it's a machine that learns, right, as it does work, as it does processing or something like that. And so it's in there. But in machine learning and AI, there's just like in quantum, there's many different subfields and areas, right? We have autonomy in launch operations, right? We have autonomy in robotic spacecraft, and so these things aren't new for NASA at all. We've been doing it for a long time. Thank you for your question. All right.
Is there any other question or not? Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. It was a pleasure to meet you here.
Thank you so much, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your talk.
Thanks.
Welcome to Madrid. Okay,